Yes.
Can students that participate in the program as juniors re-enroll in the program as seniors, or is it kind of a one?
It's kind of a one-stop thing. So one of the things that we did this year was we just targeted seniors. Not having done it before was one issue. And then we wanted to be able to feed into it so that next year we'd have up-and-coming seniors each year. So we had, like I said, originally had identified 15, but over the summer some of them had gotten employment. So we have a list of 15 that we're looking at for next year. So we're going to have an open house open to Mount Hope High School on May 30th that night.
So there's 15 proposed
candidates.
for
Yep.
10 spots.
Right. But they'll go up to 15. So there is some flexibility with that. They don't go more than 15 because we don't like to have 2 kids at the same site. We really kind of want to have them spread out and each have their own experience. If they have to, they will, and they just won't have them scheduled at the same time, but they prefer not to. But, you know, it's a long time before September, so some of the kids will get employment elsewhere, but we kind of have them identified.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Mario, does that begin to delve or mesh in with the program that we have for internships for other students?
This is separate.
We're not going to mesh it together at any time?
Not currently. I think this is 2 different avenues of schools. But there might be some businesses that overlap.
I just think it's great.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I think that it's important that we understand that different students have different needs and that we need to have different approaches and different programs and different avenues for different students. And so on our side, you know, with these programs, we're certainly providing for kids that may not advocate on their own, say, to go into that workplace or that kind of thing. So what we actually have is here, we're every year, RIDE looks at all of our data, and one of the indicators, and there are 22, I think, indicators that give us the right to continue to operate, and this is one of them. I believe it's 14, number 14, I didn't put it on there. But we've tracked our percent of engagement with students. Actually, it went back to 2012, and to take a look at where we are. And so in 2012, actually, it's not up there, we had about a 63% post-graduation engagement rate for students. And then in 2013, a 71.6. In 2014, 83% of students were gainfully engaged, 86, 92, and then finally 94% of our students are, is that blurry, Diana?
Yes.
Are meaningfully engaged in some kind of post-high school experience. And that includes some students who are in the workplace, maybe someone who's going into the military, and we actually have a number of students who, through our programming, are attending CCRI successfully.
Sorry, what are the 2 different colors?
The red is us,
Okay.
gray is the state.
Well, then good for us.
We're doing well. I'm not sure we can get much higher, but you know we're certainly working at it, and it's been a great experience for all of us. So
I'm sorry, and maybe you said this and I just missed it as I was trying to watch the graph. How are those numbers gathered? What does meaningful engagement mean, and who determines whether or not it exists for the population?
so in this graduating, so in the next couple of weeks, we are prompted by the Department of Ed to call and complete a survey with all last year's graduates. Okay, and through those survey questions, I think there's about 24-ish, 25 questions about what that student is doing a year after high school. And we submit those surveys to the state, and then they, you know, turn over the outcome to us. Meaningful engagement means some kind of post-high school, whether it's a trade school, it could be a CCRI type environment, it could be work. They're not sitting home on the couch. Okay?
Is that survey administered to all graduates?
No, just students with IEPs.
What do we do for our students? What do we do for our students without IEPs? Do something similar, to follow up to see what they're doing 1 year after graduation.
The only report we get is with the National Student Clearinghouse, is how many students are still currently enrolled in their third semester of college.
I think that was the report that
Okay. So I'd like to thank my high school folks for coming to give you a few words tonight, and we're going to shift gears a little bit. I could use some help over there, maybe. I've got a couple, just to click on the links. I don't think I can do it from here. Do you mind? I got a couple of hyperlinks there, Diane, if you don't mind. So in the next section here, we're going to talk a little bit about MTSS, RTI, DBI, and SEL, and all the alphabet soup. In years past, we have talked about RTI, and I'm sure that you've heard it. Obviously, you have heard it through your time. However, RTI has certainly morphed into what is now MTSS. So that's the multi-tiered system of support. Multi-tiered system of support is the umbrella under which all systematic interventions or systematic approaches to instruction happen. So that you can picture that as the much larger umbrella. Okay? So the major thrust with MTSS is that there are 4 important and highlighted components. We need to be systematic in our approach to instruction and intervention. We need to make data-based decisions. We need effective leadership and meaningful family involvement. I'm going to have Diane click on the hyperlink that's at the top. We'll give you a little bit of a video. I tried to pick some easy ones, some quick ones to give a little bit of explanation.
Multi-tier system of support is exactly that. It's building supports in place that will benefit students as well as educators. So for example, you're looking in an elementary school, you try to build a framework of support at all levels of instruction in order to help every student in the school succeed. So you look at the core instruction, you look at additional interventions that need to be put into place, and then you provide professional development so that teachers can help students achieve within that school system. You also produce data through ongoing progress monitoring. And progress monitoring really helps inform decisions on an ongoing basis. So that if a student is all of a sudden having difficulty in academic or even behaviorally, you can intervene at the earliest sign possible. And the supports or the interventions are in place for students as well as for the educators to access in order to support the students. So it's building a level of support at every level in order for students to be successful and for teachers to know how to help students be successful. In an effective multi-tier system of support, or MTSS, those supports are built in for a teacher to be successful and to know what to do. We've moved away from having teachers work in isolation. It's no longer the teacher is in her classroom or his classroom down the hall, closes the door, and works all day long with a group of students. In an MTSS framework, there is constant movement of the students and the educators within the building. And educators are having ongoing conversations about the data that is collected on a daily basis, and then working together as a group to determine how to best meet the needs of the students in that school. Additionally, the leadership at the school level as well as at the district level have a responsibility to put resources into place so that teachers have access to appropriate professional development, as well as resources and materials in order to put in and implement appropriate interventions so that all students can be successful. Again, the MTSS is really designed to support students, educators, as well as parents, so that we come together and have an entire system of support for the school community.
And why do we do this? Well, we do that because it's the right thing for students, but it is also a legal obligation under the BEP that we are required to have a system of support for all students. One of the things that's really important to know is that when RTI came out about 14, 15 years ago, it failed to include educators and it failed to include families. So with the birth of MTSS, it really has now become a much larger undertaking, a much larger umbrella. Some of the things that were sorely missing from the RTI model was professional development for teachers. We were asking them to do things that they weren't necessarily prepared to do. MTSS recognizes that and actually makes that a very critical component of developing your system. Some of the district level considerations to support the implementation of MTSS, RTI, DBI, and all of our other alphabet there is professional development. And it needs to be ongoing, it needs to be multi-level so that we're training principals, we're training teachers, we're training principals to train teachers, we are training service providers, and even with all that and procedures and protocols, you need to understand that this is very labor-intensive work, okay? It also requires some money. We need to be able to identify funding sources in order to provide professional development, to support an infrastructure, to purchase materials and resources. Another important component that we have actually benefited here in Bristol-Warren immensely from is university partnerships. We've had a university partnership with UConn for about 7 years that has led us in directions far beyond what I ever imagined when we first started. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a little bit. It's important that leadership understands systematic change, that we need to change and grow both at central admin, at the building admin level, and teachers. So we do that by forging consensus of a group, building an infrastructure, and then implementing our plan. During that time, everyone needs a level of support. We have had absolutely enormous support from Mario during the implementation of all of this work. So without that, we tried before, it just wasn't on the front burner. It was on Mario's front burner. And so a couple of years ago, he asked me to take on some of these initiatives and to work with schools and teachers and families and students so that we could build a structure that would support for students across the board, okay? We have had professional development and workshops and days for principals so that they can begin to carry this work through their school building. The goal of MTSS focuses on more than just academics and detailed data. It also focuses on providing multiple levels of support for students as well as resources and support for teachers and other staff who are delivering the instruction. Therefore, collaboration between teachers, administrators, district personnel, student support specialists, and other school leaders is absolutely necessary for the MTSS framework. If you can see this graphic, it really does incorporate the full day and the full scope of our work as educators and community partners with families, and pretty much a student's entire waking day. Another thing that was sorely missing, and I will talk about it in a little bit, or that we need to understand, is that not only do students need to be supported, but teachers need to be supported as well. In terms of essential components, district implementation, we need to adopt standards, which we do have Common Core state standards, so we all start from a common baseline. Very fortunately, on October 27th, 2017, the state also published the social emotional standards from Rhode Island, which you will find in your folder on the left-hand pocket. There are five anchor standards, and along with that, there are some learning standards, so they're broken down. Right now, the Department of Ed is working on taking those learning standards and applying them appropriately to students at grade level. We know that being self-aware in kindergarten looks and wears a lot different in 10th grade. So they can't mean exactly the same thing. So the Department of Ed is working that down so that it is more applicable and more easily understood. And once that happens, then we'll also be working that into our report card system and our social grading in the middle and the high school and that sort of thing. So also an essential component, providing professional development. So our plans for professional development over the past couple of years have been very, very focused in terms of support to students, procedures, protocols, resources, materials, how do I use them, what does it mean? Really taking a look at data and using that as a source to guide me through my day. If I'm the classroom teacher, if I'm the building principal, no matter what your role is, if I'm the assistant superintendent, if I'm the director of literacy, that we're definitely using that data to drive what we're doing with students on a daily basis. It does support students pre-K through 12. It's essential. You cannot work a system that doesn't have a universal screen and an assessment system, and with defined tiered supports. The other piece that's very important in the MTSS work that we're doing is the inclusion of community and family support, which also was sorely missing in just the strictly RTI fed model. So what we've done is we've actually taken a self-assessment that is pretty standard, and it's very lengthy. I actually put a copy of that as well in your packet. That would be in the right-hand side of your packet, and worked with all the building principals. As a result, we have written a 5-year plan of implementation for the district, which will need to be updated soon. And then every school has a 5-year plan of exploration, installation, implementation, innovation, and sustainability. Because no matter what we do in terms of initiatives, we need to be able to sustain them beyond, the initial implementation. And so that's always a part of the conversation. So the district has a 5-year plan, and each one of the schools, because they enter the process at a little bit of a different level, also has their own specific 5-year plan that relates back to the district plan. Each school as well writes at least 2 annual goals. So keeping their 5-year plan in mind, they write an annual goal. What can we reasonably attain by the end of this school year? And that's in reviewing that self-assessment every year, so it keeps it alive. And then I meet monthly with every building administration, and we go through a cycle of review, commit, and do. So what am I doing right now? What will I commit to do, and how am I going to get it done? So there is this. It's constant. It is constant. It is ongoing. So you don't forget about that thing. Oh yeah, I have to fill that paper out. The other thing that we do is quarterly, we ask the principals to look at their annual goals and see where they are as well. So there's this continuous improvement and continuous examination of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and where we want to go. So in terms of RTI or MTSS, we talk about academic and social emotional learning. We look at our academics as well as our social emotional, and we need, this is a standard RTI model. We assume that in a well-functioning, successful model that 80% of our population is meeting that benchmark, whatever it may be, academic or social emotional. And we do that through a universal screener. About 15% we assume need some kind of targeted intervention. Targeted intervention we kind of refer to as what was our tier 2. That green, that 80% is tier 1. The yellow, that tier 2. So that might be, for instance, a social group for the student once a week. It may be that they're getting some kind of additional academic instruction that's very specific to that student's need 2 or 3 times a week. And we progress monitor at that level about once a month, okay? And then we have the tier 3, which is red, should be about 5% of our population that may have some more intensive support, either academically or behaviorally. So those might be students who are seen by a specialist every day and progress monitored bi-weekly. What that does is it gives us a much quicker look at where a student is, how much progress they're making, and where we need to go with that student. We'll talk a little bit about social emotional learning. So what is SEL? Because I know that's a phrase that is just out there, and I'm not sure that everybody has a full understanding of what SEL is. And again, these are the 5 core competencies: self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness that we expect in our classrooms, our schools, our homes, and our communities. So not only is this an important thing to think about in terms of classroom and what we're teaching, but it also is important for us to consider and think about as we interact with our colleagues on a daily basis. Because a true SEL community begins with adults taking care of each other. Let's see. So these are the tiers that I did mention a few minutes ago. If you could, on that slide, Diane, I'm just going to give you a little note here. The next slide, what happened? That one. Can you just hold on one second though? There are actually 2 hyperlinks here, and Karen's going to email you this slideshow. The first one, what is social emotional learning, is a little bit shorter. The second one is well worth watching if you have a chance to go back. It's a 6-minute video, so I don't want to necessarily, take that time, but it is well worth watching. CASEL is the Collaborative Assessment of Social and Emotional